In the future, the flat-top AR dominated the battle space. A select few men stood against the flat-top regime. These men were the carry-handle bros. They clutched onto their delta rings and fixed sights in defiance of the new order. A 1,000-year war ensued. Many lives were lost, many of which belonged to the carry-handle bros as they had insufficient methods of mounting IR lasers. Most either converted to flat top or were killed for their resistance. Nearly all was lost until one man stood against all odds, blessed with the ancient knowledge of 𝑫𝑰𝑺𝑪𝑳𝑻𝑹. A new warrior entered the battlefield, armed with nothing more than his tube.
Contact! Hey, why don't you have a tube handguard yet, huh? Come on, dude, get with the times, man. We're all getting the free float tube, all right? So I get like a million questions a week based on the Car 15, and you know, where'd you get that tube? What's the parts list? Where can I go to get the whatever, right? So I'm gonna make this video as like a kind of all-inclusive, is that the word? All-inclusive guide. So whenever somebody hits me up and asks me, I can just send them this video. So the tubes have been making their rounds on Instagram, and a very famous one by the name of 𝑀ichael_NO_H. If you're on Instagram, you may know who he is. He's kind of is the godfather of the tube, and he got it from the actual godfathers, which would be like Delta and CIA and stuff in the 90s, because this is like, that's what this build is based off of essentially. So get your notebook ready, because we're just gonna immediately start learning. Good old Michael, he put me on the website called Sherlock or Fulton Armory. Now, Sherlock is a really old website, but that's where I got mine from. They're only about 50 bucks. It's basically a DIY sort of handguard. So it is a very impractical upgrade for what would be an otherwise practical AR. Only the ones who are really in it for the love of the game are gonna go and do this handguard. Don't just go buy one of these and just hoard it and then never do it, all right? You really gotta love what you're doing here. So the tube comes in two pieces. It comes with the handguard and the barrel nut. So you're gonna take your old gun and you're going to remove the barrel nut and the old delta ring, the end plate, the handguards. You can just throw those away, all right? Or you can just keep them for another build. But you can take those, discard those. You're not gonna need that anymore. You're just gonna need the muzzle, front sight base, gas tube, and the barrel. So then you take your barrel nut and your barrel and you torque that on. If you know how to do that, good. I learned from Larry Potterfield, so you can go get your wisdom from him. I'm not gonna show you how to do that. I can't do that according to YouTube. Once you get that barrel nut and the barrel torqued down and you know what the gas tube fits, you're good. Now you're gonna screw on the handguard. Now the handguard, it just screws in one direction and it stops. So it's not like there's no secondary screws where you screw in to make sure that it's secure. It just torques on one way, it comes on one way, and it comes off the same way. So I put a little Loctite on there just because I wanted to give myself peace of mind. I know heat is the enemy of especially blue Loctite, but I wanted to Loctite down just to give it, so it doesn't walk on me during, you know, recoil, or as the gun vibrates, it doesn't come off. So I torqued that on there, and I made sure not to over torque it as to ruin the spec of the barrel nut, or the torque spec rather. So if you over torque this thing, you twist it too much, that hole in the barrel nut and the upper receiver are gonna like get misaligned, and then you won't be able to fit your gas tube. So that's why I had the gas alignment key in there while I twisted it on. So got that thing torqued on, and hand tight. You don't want to use a strap wrench or anything. Again, you don't want to over tighten this thing. You just want to make sure it's snug enough that's not going to walk. And it's also not going to walk because of the front sight base, but we'll get to that. So once that thing's on there, then you need to put front sight base on. So I just kind of measured and drew a straight line with a Sharpie, and then went in with a Dremel, put this thing in a vise block, and then just went in with a Dremel and just made my cuts. I just kind of monkeyed it. I didn't measure anything. I could measure it now so I could like tell you guys what it is, but I haven't done that. So went in, drew, you know, straight cuts, and then I filed it a little bit because it can be kind of sharp. It's just like raw aluminum in here. So filed it down a little bit, and then I made sure, you know, I kept sliding this thing on, see if I needed to go a little bit more, but I slew the front sight base on with the gas tube aligned, and it connected, all good to go, made sure it lined, and it was fine there. But then you gotta go in, and then you have to put the taper pins for the front sight base back in. So I made 2 holes, just right there. And then so I messed up one of the holes, so I had to like move it over just a little bit and then hit the taper pins back in. You get the taper pins back in, and then it's good to go. And then everything else is extra. So if you want to put a grip like I did down here, you can just drill it, and then I tapped it. So this is thick enough that you can tap. So I went and bought tap set from Lowe's, and I just tapped it, and then you can directly screw in like the little M-lock screws and whatnot, the screws that come with the Magpul rail. I just used some of that and then drilled directly in and tapped it. So it is a little bit off center, the grip is at least, which kind of bothers me. I think about it constantly. But when I get a drill press, because all this was done like by hand, so if I actually get a drill press, I'll do it correctly. But until that, I'm just kind of, I didn't want to like do too much where I screwed it all up. So that's the tube. It's pretty simple. Now, there are guys out there who will, Michael is an example of this, Mr. No H, that will cut just a pocket here for the front sight base. Now, I don't know how to do that, so don't ask me. I just did it this would be more, it's the easier way to do it. It's also the clone correct way to do it, where you cut this channel out, because that's what they used to do back in the 90s. But some guys like to just have it like this so that they can mount something, put a piece of rail here and mount like a laser forward of the front sight base, which would be a good upgrade, but I just didn't do that, and I don't know how to do that. So that's the tube. There's really nothing special as far as that goes. And then as far as the rest of the parts build, because I know people want to know, just a Colt 6920 barrel. Or it says 13629, so, but it's a Colt barrel. And then as far as the optic goes, this is actually kind of interesting because this is an 8.2000. Now, the previous scope rings I had on this were kind of problematic because I couldn't get the sight perfectly, I couldn't get it perfectly level because of the battery housing. So the battery housing, as you can see, it's in a really unfortunate position. So when you go to, you know, try to get this thing level, if you have the wrong scope rings or the wrong rail, it will prevent it. There's physically not enough space to keep twisting it this way to get it level. So mine was just ever so slightly canted over to the side. So I got the Leupold 1-inch scope rings to put on there instead, and those gave me enough clearance that I could put that battery housing there, or I could set it and level it and be fine. Now the rail, I actually called Maryland Gun Works. They're in Georgia now. Maryland Gun Works makes these Weaver style of carry handle mounts, and these would be clone correct for like some of the Larry Vickers and just some of the clone guns out there that people make. These would be clone correct. So I called them and said, are you guys still in business? Like, can we still order from you? And you can get the Weaver, the carry handle mounts, but you got to call them. So they make a 5.5-inch one, and then they make a 7.5-inch, and it's like 30 and 40 bucks. So that certainly beats going and getting a Chinese rail, for example. But the cool part about the Maryland Gun Works rails is that there's actually a cutout specifically for the aim-point battery housing here. So it has enough clearance to come down. If you go get another kind of mount, you may not be able to have that clearance if you have an 8.2000. Pretty niche little thing. Later aim-point models fixed a lot of the issues like that. You know, they had a much better battery housing, and they're a little bit smaller too, but that's just a downside of the 2000. Upper is just a Luth that I got. These were like gold back in the day, like 2021, 22. You couldn't get these. They'd be posted on like the Retro AR subreddit, and they'd be gone in like minutes. But that's pretty cool. We got a PSA lower.
Social credit deducted.
I threw a Geisley G2S in here. Now the Geisley, these were cheaper than the LaRue MBTs on like during Black Friday. So weapons clear. So it's like a 4.5-pound 2-stage trigger. Very little take up. I can't say ghost trigger, I think that's coined. Maybe we can do a little zoom in here. Little take up, and then a real crisp sort of break, but real inexpensive. These were under 100 bucks on PSA's website. A few weeks ago, they were that cheap, so pretty cool there. I could probably upgrade the bulk carrier group just because I think it's like a Brownells Retro Series one, or it's like a PSA or something.
Social.
Probably throw a better bolt in there and make it a little bit better. And then as far as the stock goes, in the buffer tube, I got an H2 buffer just because it's a carbine link gas system. Helps a little bit of the felt recoil go down, I guess. It helps you tune your rifle a little bit. And I got the John Mason butt pad. Car 15 stock, of course, and then the Hammy Prince cheek riser, who makes a bunch of these. And he's a friend of mine, so go check him out. That's pretty much all I got, guys. So that's the parts build. And then a Colt sling. I got this at a local gun show, and I just paracorded it up because that's what you do, I guess, when you have a retro AR. So that's pretty much all I got. So now I can send this to people and say, hey, this is the parts list for the build. Have fun. Now the gun is based off of like kind of like 90s operators used to have. Now, I misspoke in my previous XM4 video if you did see that, or I said Delta Force didn't use it, but apparently Delta Force did use it. I don't know a lot of the actual history of it. I've just seen old photos here on Instagram and on Reddit and whatnot of guys using guns that look like this. Now, people confuse often this one for the Armalite. I think it's the Armalite fiberglass tube. I think it's fiberglass or aluminum, I don't know which one it is. It's green or it can be black, and it's got a different, you can kind of tell by the barrel nut. So the barrel nut on that one is like thicker and it looks different than this. This has a very, well, the barrel nut's under here, you can't really see it. It's just covered by the tube, whereas the other one looks just different. So you can tell right away the difference between those. So that's pretty much all I got for this build and this video. So I appreciate you guys watching. If you are interested in cloning, the guys, the trinity, the gray beards of cloning would probably be guys like Michael 𝑫𝑰𝑺𝑪𝑳𝑍𝑰𝑴𝑬𝑹, specifically for stuff like this. Guys like Otter Weapon Works, he's a real good cloner. He's done a lot of different stuff. And guys like Inferior Rifles as well. I just kind of found out about him. He makes some good stuff too. So those are kind of like the gray beards of the cloning world. So go give those guys a follow and check them out. And that's pretty much all I got. So if you guys enjoyed, go ahead and smash the like button. Feel free to join the Patreon if you'd like. And I have merch as well. You can go to my website and buy a shirt, buy a couple shirts, maybe even a notebook or a coffee cup if your heart desires. And then you can go follow me on Instagram, X. I guess it's actually called X now because they changed the domain. So I'm not going to call it Twitter anymore. But go follow me on X and should be a good time. So without further ado, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.